Warzone 2 has 55 weapons already, if you can believe it, and I'm gonna rank all of them for you today, from meta to just don't use them. I'm Austin, and let's start off with the most popular weapon type, assault rifles. We're gonna start off strong with the cast-off 7.62 that I think is easily a meta weapon. You're gonna use it as a long-range AR, and it's gonna have a really fast time to kill. It has a little bit of recoil, but most weapons in this game do. You can use that to 70 meters, no problem. Now let's go to the other cast-off assault rifle, the 5.45, which did just get buffed, and it used to be in the don't use category, but I think it might have creeped its way all the way up into average because they increased the chest shot multiplier, and it helped out the time to kill slightly, but it still isn't anything to write home about. Now let's go to the TAC 56 or SCAR, and it's going to be the opposite of the AK-47, but still meta for a completely different reason. It's going to be much more accurate, but it's going to be only an average TTK for ARs at 960 milliseconds compared to 700 milliseconds on this cast-off, but the ease of use is just too good to pass up for your average level skilled player. Now let's go over to the M4, a classic Call of Duty staple in every multiplayer. It's not the most accurate, it's not the fastest time to kill, but it is a little bit above average in both those categories, including movement, and for that reason alone, it's going to be top tier. Now we're going to take a look at the cast-off 74U that performs more like an SMG than an assault rifle. It actually has the slowest TTK at long range, but they did just actually nerf this with that mid-season update, where the TTK up close did fall off slightly, and I still think it's top tier, but it fell out of meta. Now let's move over to the STB 5.56, sort of the AUG variant of assault rifles, and I think this is meta. A lot of people don't realize how good this is, but it actually has a faster time to kill up close than the Fennec 45. Now, it isn't going to have the mobility of an SMG, you're going to have to gear your attachments towards that, but as a sniper support, this thing is elite because of its time to kill. If we take a look at the M13B, this is one that a lot of people like a lot, but I think it's only in the can compete category because it has like an okay TTK, it has a really fast fire rate, which makes it forgiving if you miss some shots, and then it's pretty accurate, but it's not a beam like the Lockman 5.56 down here that I think is a slightly better variant of the M13B that would go into top tier because it has absolutely no recoil, even more accurate than the TAC 56, but it's going to kill about 100 milliseconds slower, which is why it is one level down from the SCAR. We're already on the last assault rifle, the M16, and it actually has the second fastest time to kill amongst assault rifles at long range, just behind the cast-off 7.62. But the problem with it is it takes 9 bullets to knock someone, and that means you need 3 bullets from 3 bursts to hit him, meaning if you miss one, it's going to take an extra burst and a delay that will really knock off the TTK, so it's super unforgiving. And I think the only way they can make this thing better than average, increase the damage or increase the fire rate to sort of make that penalty not as drastic. I put a lot of research into this video, so I'd really appreciate if you could get this video to 50 likes and subscribe for more Warzone 2 content that will keep you on top of the meta and keep you entertained. And now we're going to move on to the subs, with the FS Hurricane being number 1. A lot of people don't think this sub is that good because it has the second slowest time to kill up close for submachine guns, but what it has going for it is it has a really good magazine at 50 rounds that you can't even change, which gives you an extra attachment slot to put to wherever you want, the best bullet velocity, as well as pretty good range for an SMG, and it makes it a very good sniper support, so I would put it in the can compete category if you're using it to support your snipers. The Lockman sub, or the MP5, this is going to go straight into meta. It actually has really good bullet velocity for an SMG, even though it's a close range specialist because the damage range is only 8.5 meters without attachments, but it's going to have the second best TTK up close and the best mobility on subs, which makes it very good inside of buildings and rushing people, and it's going to be one of your best close range SMGs. The Vazev 9K, this is also going to have a really fast time to kill up close, but it's going to be about 15 milliseconds slower than that Lockman sub, which isn't really a big deal, so you can't knock it for that, but the mobility's a little bit worse, and it has slightly better range, but I just don't think it is quite as good as the Lockman, so I'm going to put it in the top tier category. Now we got the Mini Back, or the Mini Bach, I don't know how you say it, but it's basically the Bison of Warzone 2, and this is going to have an average TTK for SMGs, which is going to make it a little slower than the Vazev or the Lockman sub. But what it has going for it is a 64 round base mag, which gives it the best damage per mag on all the subs, making it perfect for quads. And on top of that, you have the fastest reload time, which is a really weird combo. Give it great damage per mag and a great reload time. That's kind of OP, but then it has almost no recoil and a really good range. But the time to kill being average is the only thing that holds it off from being meta, but I think this is the top tier of the SMGs. Now we got the Fennec 45, and this is going to go straight into meta. It has the fastest TTK among every sub, up close, 30 milliseconds better than the Lockman sub. The only problem with it is that if you hit stomach shots, it will actually lower the TTK to be slightly below the Lockman, so you got to be a little bit more precise, but the recoil isn't too bad. It has over 1,000 rounds per minute, which makes it the most forgiving SMG up close when you miss a shot, because it only affects your faster time to kill by about 50 milliseconds, whereas something like the Lockman Sub, it would affect it by about 70 milliseconds if you miss a bullet. But the one problem that you can run into with this is that you only have a 45 round clip, and with the fire rate being so fast, that magazine empties really quickly. The MX9, this had the slowest sprint to fire time among SMGs up close in Warzone 2, and they did just buff it a little bit to help it out. It's still actually going to be the slowest sprint to fire time, so while they did help it, not that much. And the TTK is slightly below average for SMGs up close, and I just don't really think it could be considered top tier or meta. It's only going to be in can compete. The PDSW or P90 has a really slow time to kill up close at 594 milliseconds, which is going to put you at about 100 milliseconds slower than the Finnick 45. That is a huge difference in this game because every millisecond counts, and the only thing that is going to keep it from being in don't use is going to be that it has the best hipfire spread on every single SMG in the game. The BAS P from the Battle Pass. Normally you would think a Battle Pass weapon is going to be somewhere in can compete top tier meta, but this is going straight in the don't use category. Slowest TTK up close, 20 milliseconds slower than the Hurricane, but you don't have really good range or really good bullet velocity. This thing just doesn't do anything well, so don't use it. The Vel 46 or the MP7. This actually has the same exact time to kill as the MX9, and it did also get buffed recently by increasing its mobility stats, which it will be better across the board than the MX9 there, including sprint to fire, which is why I'm still going to throw it in can compete, and we've made it onto LMGs. I would say this is the most stacked category of weapons in Warzone, because I don't think any of them should be below can compete. The Icarus has the second slowest TTK on an LMG, but it would be faster than every AR outside of the cast-off 7.62, and it is actually the best mobility LMG, so when you're running around this thing, it almost feels like an AR. And I'd throw it in can't compete because I don't think it's super beamy or anything like that, but the TTK and the movement definitely put it above average. The RPK, I don't think I need to say too much about this. This is meta. It's the best weapon in the game. Has the same time to kill as the Castle 7.62, but you know what it does better? Well, it has way less recoil and way better damage per mag. It's the perfect gun in any size game mode. Now the Rap H, this actually will have the fastest fire rate among every single light machine gun, as well as having the same time to kill as the Lockman Sub up close, as well as having a 750 millisecond TTK at long range, making it almost as good as the RPK or cast off, and I would actually consider it top tier. The only thing going against it is really going to be the mobility is a little bit slow and the reload is slow, but outside of that, it's really good at everything. Now the Raw LMG is elite at everything outside of movement, where it is atrociously slow. It is disgusting, but the time to kill is actually 540 milliseconds at long range, which is a joke. Now there is a 72 millisecond open bolt delay, meaning when you hit the trigger, it takes 72 milliseconds for the gun to actually start firing, which is how they sort of balance it out. But you know what that adds to? 612 milliseconds. That is still nearly 100 milliseconds faster than the RPK and cast-off 7.62, so it's still going to go into meta. The second MG38 is the most LMG, and that's really all I have to say about it. I would just put it in can compete. The HCR 56. This actually has the slowest time to kill on LMGs at 810 milliseconds at long range. But you know what? That would still be the second fastest assault rifle behind this cast-off 7.62, and it's really accurate. And it has the second best mobility behind the Icarus on LMG, so it still feels like an AR kind of, and I think it's top tier. Very underrated weapon. And let's move right on over to the battle rifles. We got the FTAC Recon that I'm going to throw into niche, because it's actually pretty good up close, where it's going to have a faster time to kill than every single weapon on this list up close. Now, it isn't that forgiving, because if you miss your shots when you're trying to fire quickly, it's going to fall off a bit. But it reminds me of the FAL from Modern Warfare 2019 in Warzone when it was super OP. Now we're going to move on to the TAC V, the SCAR variant of the battle rifles, the only naturally fully automatic one, and you can have a pretty big clip. The mobility is a little bit slower, but the time to kill is way better, while still being a mid-range demon, and it is going to go into top tier. Now we're on to the Lockman 7.62, and I'm going to put it in a niche just like the FTAC Recon. But you know what I said about the FTAC? How it had the fastest time to kill close out of all these weapons on this list? Well, the Lockman 7.62 beats it by 8 milliseconds, so it is the new king here, and so if I was going to pick one of these two niche weapons, I would pick the Lockman 7.62. The SO14, the last battle rifle, will actually have the best time to kill at long range out of all these battle rifles. It's 700 milliseconds, matching the cast-off 7.62 and RPK. But I wouldn't say it's quite as accurate or easy to use, and is a little bit less forgiving, but it has a very good bullet velocity, so it's going to go into can compete, but if you're a little bit higher skilled, you could probably bump this up to top tier. And now we finally made made to sniper rifles. This has been a hot topic since this game has come out because you can't get one-shot headshots when people have 3 plates on. The Victus XMR, which I'm going to be talking about first, for a short period of time when you put explosive rounds on, it could get one-shot headshots, but they took that away. And now the sniper rifles, I don't think any of them can be considered meta, but they're definitely all in the can't compete or top tier category because they're still really good at holding people at bay and they can't rotate when you got a sniper. The Victus XMR has the best bullet velocity on sniper rifles, so I'm going to put it in top tier. I'm going to go to the Signal 50 next because this is another top tier one because of how fast the fire rate is. The fire rate of this weapon reminds me of the Gorenko anti-tank from Warzone 1 at the end of the life cycle. Not quite as good as that, not quite as OP because you can't get the one-shot headshots, but if you want a sniper where you can actually knock people a lot, the Signal 50 is the one for you because you can follow up your shots so quickly. And that's going to be the same thing with this XPX 80, and I'm going to put it right next to the Signal 50 in top tier. And the next two sniper rifles, I don't really want to talk about that much because they're just slightly worse than these other ones. They're both going to go into the can't compete category. I wouldn't really use them. I'd use one of the other 3 if I was going to use a sniper rifle. Now we're onto the Marksman Rifles. And the most important one to talk about is going to be this EBR-14 that's going to go straight into top tier. And the only thing keeping it out of meta for me is that you have to use sniper ammo, meaning you can only have 40 bullets before you have to start storing it in your backpack. And your backpack slots are super valuable because you can have an extra self-res in there, extra kill streak, or extra plates. And that's the only thing that really makes me not want to put this higher. But it can knock people with 2 headshots at long range, just like these sniper rifles, but it has a way faster fire rate. And it also allows you to use it at mid-range a lot easier because of the fire rate being much faster, and it makes it much more forgiving than the sniper rifles. Now, there's only 2 other Marksman Rifles I really want to talk about, and that is going to be the SPR and Lockwood, which I would both put in the can compete category. And that's going to be because they function a lot like these sniper rifles, but they have a lot better mobility, and you can still get 2 knocks to the head. Their body shot damage is just going to be way worse, and the SPR ground loot is actually really fun to use. And then these last 3 Marksman Rifles I just won't use. The TACM is absolutely disgusting. The LAB-50, gross. And then the LMS is basically kind of like the Lockman 7.62 or the FTAC Recon, but just worse because you have to use sniper ammo. So don't use any of those. And now we're on to shotguns. You guys probably remember they just nerfed them because some of them, like the Bryson 800, could one-shot people at close range with 3 plates on, which seemed a bit overpowered to me. Now the Bryson 800 would take 2 shots up close to knock someone, and I think that is just the right category for it. This one totally put in average because with the correct attachments, you can make the fire rate on this really fast, which allows it to still knock people pretty quickly, but the ammo situation isn't great, especially with it having the worst range out of all 4 of the shotguns in the game. The Lockwood 300, it's great in multiplayer, but for Warzone, I just wouldn't use it because you only have 2 shots before you gotta reload it, and while you can knock someone in those 2 shots, to have to reload after every single knock just isn't viable to do in Warzone. Now for the best shotgun that definitely can still compete, the Bryson 800. It did catch that nerf, can still knock people in 2 bullets, still has a pretty decent fire rate, and has very good range for a shotgun, and this is going to be the best one by a mile. And then the Bryson 890 is just a worse version of the 800, so we're going to throw it in average right next to the Expedite 12. And really quickly, I'm just going to put the combat knife and ride shield in niche. They can both be pretty effective, but let's be real, you're just trying to have fun if you're using these 2 weapons. And let's take a look at the pistols. In the mid-season update, they nerfed all of them in their akimbo form by lowering their damage, so their time to kills weren't absolutely ridiculous, or else all of these weapons would just have gone into meta right now. Now the Deagle did also get a buff with that, where they increased its range and some of its damage multipliers, like the neck shots and the chest shots, which should make it a bit better, but I still think this is the least forgiving pistol out of all the ones on this list, and that's why I'm only going to put it in can compete. Now the Basilisk, this thing can actually 2-shot knock someone as a single pistol, which gives it a very good time to kill, and it has very good range, and that's why it's going to go into top tier as a single pistol, not even as an akimbo. The only problem with it is you only got 5 bullets in the chamber, so it really can't be used past duos. And then we got the X13 Auto. It's just going to go into average. I think this is the worst pistol on the list. It's fully automatic, so you would think it'd be really good, but it just isn't. The X12 and the P890 probably got hit the hardest by the nerf, but they're still really good and they're still top tier. They now only have about the same time to kill as the Finnick up close as akimbo pistols, but that's still really good, and you can choose a different perk package from Overkill and just rock these as your secondary, and that's a very good strategy. Last category, rocket launchers. I'm going to put the RPG in niche because obviously it can be pretty effective, but every other rocket launcher I just would not use. And that is going to wrap up the video, and if you want to know some of the best class setups for these weapons, check out this video right here. Peace.